Let's be friends.
Have you not?
And here we go.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the Ambassador Wing and episode 7 of the Tarantino podcast. With me today, I've got my good friend. You know him, you love him, he's awesome, Mr. Ace Moick. And today we're going to be sharing our thoughts on Django Unchained, the first of the duology of Western Quinten Tarantino brought to us. And as always, if you're enjoying this series of reviews that me and Ace and all my friends are bringing to you, hit that like button, hit the share, and obviously subscribe. But yeah, Ace, we're back once again. It's good to be back. It's been a minute. It's been longer than a minute, and today we're talking Django Unchained, Tarantino's first attempt at the Western. And I have to admit, I never watched this all the way through, and it is awesome.
Yeah, I've only...
Awesome. So, thoughts on Django?
It was my, preparing for this discussion, it was my second time seeing it all the way through, and I thought it was a good Western. I remember hearing about it probably close to the time when it first came out, and I just wasn't interested in it at the time because, I kind of had that disinterest in Tarantino at the time. And I heard from a lot of people, oh, very fine. I thought, well, it's Tarantino. But watching the movie, I thought very good, kind of, I wouldn't say revisionist history, but kind of reminds me of Inglourious Basterds in terms of revenge fantasy, but of a different kind.
Yeah. And we'll dig a little bit further into that. This, of course, was this was the first time, as far as I can recall, the Tarantino worked. Not the first time that he's worked with who this time plays a good guy. Dr. King Schultz, bounty hunter / dentist, although he hasn't practiced mystery in years, according to him. And
5 years, I think.
Yeah, 5 years, roughly. And I have to admit, while I liked Chris as Lieutenant Hans Landa in Inglourious Basterds, I actually liked him better in this. He plays a much better... I mean, don't get me wrong, he plays a good bad guy, but he plays an even better good guy in this case. Although bounty hunters aren't necessarily good guys per se, they're more neutral, but in this instance, we like Dr. King Schultz and we like Django, so ergo, there are heroes, there are protagonists, not our antagonists. And obviously, we've got all the little earmarks of a Tarantino film here. We have some very high octane gore. We have some very good dialogue. We have some very interesting set pieces in terms of Django and Dr. Schultz riding into Daughtry, Texas, and comes to town looking for a bad guy who's done some bad things and ends up getting shot. For that, of course, we have the scene with Dr. Schultz freeing Django because he's looking for a trio known as the Brittle Brothers. But this was... I have to admit, I was on the fence about this movie. I didn't know if it would really be my kind of thing, but I have always loved Wayne. Obviously, grew up on John Wayne and Gary Cooper and all those greats from back in the day, and obviously some more modern ones like Tombstone and 310 to Yuma and things like that. So I've never been anti-Western, but I wasn't sure how Tarantino would do when he wandered into the foray of the Western himself. But for his first attempt, a good start. So, Ace, your thoughts?
Well, I concur with your sentiment. It has the typical hallmarks of Tarantino, like obviously, like you mentioned, the the violence. It's got the liberal use of certain racial slurs said by both sides of the racial equation there, and some of them from Samuel L. Jackson, of course. A good soundtrack, which some of it might seem out of place in a Western movie, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was still a good choice of music, and he actually does have Ennio Morricone contributing to the soundtrack of this movie, which is always welcome. A classic spaghetti Western composer, and
who's very well known for his work with Mr. Clint Eastwood on the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly movies, or the Man with No Name movie, and the Ugly, the Fistful of Dollars, and for $4 More. Obviously, those trio of films.
And who I might add was did some other spaghetti westerns that were other than Sergio Leone. One of them, I believe, actually, maybe a couple of them, I'm not certain, but I do know one for sure with another Sergio Corbucci, which Django Unchained was influenced by one of Sergio Corbucci's films, being the original Django, part of the what some people have dubbed the Mud trilogy of Corbucci's, which this movie is very much paying homage to, with very muddy ground in certain towns.
Yeah, obviously, with like Daughtry, Texas, and a few locations like Greenville. So yeah, definitely.
Ironically, I'm in Greenville, South Carolina right now.
So one of the things for me with this film is, and it's kind of spelled out. It's spelled out Midwell and Dr. Schultz are getting to know each other, and when Django reveals the name of his wife, Broomhilda, Hildy, and everything is as her nickname is, and Dr. Schultz is like, "Your wife's name is Broomhilda," and he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, now I feel very obligated, especially since I'm German, to help your wife." And he's like, "Why?" And he tells Django the legend of Siegfried and Broomhilda, which is kind of the backdrop for another early 2000s film by the name of although granted you have a very unconventional knight in the person of Shrek, but you do the princess who's in the castle surrounded by fire and brimstone and guarded by a dragon. Although Shrek pays homage to that particular part, but at the same time, it obviously turns things on its head in a lot of other ways in terms of the whole fairy tale genre. It's a discussion for another toy. But Schultz is like, well, and he's also like, I've never actually given someone their freedom before, and so Schultz is like, how about, he's like, we partner up for the winter. We up some berries. When winter breaks, I'll take you to Greenville and then eventually to Chattanooga, Tennessee. No, is in Tennessee, if I remember correctly. And no, strike that. Yeah, they do go to Greenville, and that's where eventually they find Candyland and obviously Broomhilda, where we meet Mandy, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. So,
yeah, I think Chattanooga was to get the three brothers. I think.
Yeah, Chattanooga was where to get the Brittle brothers, and then they go down to Mississippi to locate his wife, and then to Greenville, South Carolina, to ultimately rescue Broomhilda, if I'm remembering correctly, which I think I am. So, let me ask you, the relationship between Django and Dr. Schultz, what did you think of it? Did it seem natural? It seemed to have fun, and
I liked their dynamic. It wasn't a typical like buddy team up movie, and where like they start off as opposites and then kind of like one's more stern and hard ass and the other one's kind of a bit more goofy. They're both kind of on like a similar function in terms of different, but like Schultz treats Django as not Schultz. Wait, is it Schultz?
Dr. King Schultz. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was right. I was about to say Schwartz, but Schwartz does treat Django in a humane way, which is to comment on the time that
I meant to say Schultz.
Okay, yeah, it's because he's a European, he's not an American, he's going to have a different perspective on slavery than an American, so he'll treat a slave in a more dignified manner. And Django, ever having been used to white people, obviously, just is kind of not sure what to do, but then gradually becomes a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, comfortable with just acting casual around Schultz, and like even sometimes snapping back at him when they have a disagreement. Just goes to show, like, hey, you might have freed me, but so on and so forth.
Well, yeah, and here's that's the interesting thing between Django and Schultz is the fact that Schultz takes him under his wing, the whole bounty hunting trade, and the fact that in one particular scene and everything on a farm that's owned by was once to have a very notorious gang, but Django's hesitant to shoot the guy because his son's right there, and Schultz he pulls out the wanted and says it aloud and everything, and then let that sit on you for a minute, and okay, now you've read handbill, you realize how bad this guy is. Now pick up the rifle and take the shot. Ultimately, Django does. Right in front of the guy's kid. I think for me right there, that's a very powerful scene because Django is accustomed. He doesn't have a problem taking a life, but he does have a line that he's unwilling to cross. But then he realizes, okay, yeah, this guy has led a very, and even though now he's a farmer, and that doesn't really erase what he's done. And I think for Django, that's a bit uncomfortable for him, but at the same time, he does come to understand what Schultz is saying to him. And that, yes, taking a life is not an easy thing, but sometimes it is necessary. In this case, correctly, it was like something around $7,000 or so. And that's a lot of money between the two of them. That's about, if I'm doing my math right, that's about $3,500 each if they split 50-50. So
for the one guy, I think, because I think for the entire gang altogether was like 11,500 if memory serves.
So on the lines, yeah. So it's interesting because Django at the beginning of the movie, Schultz rescues him and the rest of the transported with. Django excited about shooting the guys that have been him and the rest of the other slaves or anything to wherever they're headed. And but here you have a different dynamic at play. You have a seemingly reformed criminal who now has a family. But Django, up until this point, and very easy about the shot, killing another person. So I think it actually adds some depth to Django. But all the time, he himself is because he had and he ultimately rescues Hildy from Candyland. him and Broomhilda will probably go off and they'll have a family of their own, hopefully a quiet life, and they'll live to a good age, even though he a bounty hunter, a successful one. So, any thoughts you want to share on the points I've brought up so far?
Well, like you mentioned, the great scene of Django like doing killing that one major criminal in front of his son, how he was first put off until he read the bounty flyer and basically saying about the guy's crimes for him, and realized, okay, this guy should be stopped. It kind of occurred to me, it kind of reminded me of Kill Bill. Like, basically, he knows this guy who now has a family and as a kid did some horrible stuff, and he's a bad guy beforehand. I'm not going to let that stop me from killing him in front of his own kid, even though in Kill Bill, the bride is hesitant to do in front of, I can't remember the character's name, but
Vernita Green.
Vernita Green in front of her daughter. Django has no such qualms and realizes, okay, this guy is deserves to die, and just no qualms about it. Mm-hmm. And obviously reflecting of the times, it was the West and whatnot, the Old West, even though it took place in the South, but
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is this takes place about 2 to 3 years before. It takes place in 1858 to 2 years on facts. So you have to ask the question.
Yeah.
Take place in, or does he take part in the civil free man? He has his bill of sales saying he's a free man, as is his wife. So will Django ultimately get involved? My guess is he might. But moving on to some of the other characters that we meet throughout the course of this movie, of course, there's Big Day by Don Johnson of Miami fame and so on. We have a very notorious group from the South that call it the Klan, and leave it at that. And Big Daddy,
them boys in their bed sheets.
Yeah, and their bed sheets they can't see in very well, and ultimately, when Dr. Schultz and Django kill the Brittle brothers and all that, Big Daddy and his buddies ain't too happy, but Dr. Schultz perpetrates a great big whammy on him. He puts some dynamite in the tooth on top of his dentist's cart. And I have to admit, that was an awesome scene when Schultz is up on the bluff overlooking. Guys come in with their torches on horseback, and nails the ace and blows them all to Kingdom Come. It's your turn, and he's like, Big Daddy's getting away. He's like, I got him. He's getting away. I've got him. And down goes Big Daddy.
So satisfying.
Yes, very, very, very satisfying. And then, of course, we meet one of the few characters that Quentin Tarantino himself said that when he wrote this character, he hated this character. That, of course, is Monsieur Candy, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And Monsieur Candy, yeah, he got what he deserved. He got his brain and everything, if I remember correctly, and I shed not one tear for him. The only thing that sucked is the fact that Dr. Schultz gets killed and then Django gets imprisoned and gets sent off to work in a quarry, if I remember correctly, or some sort of mine where it's going to be pretty much nothing but hard labor.
Yeah, I think Candy got shot in the chest on the little carnation he had on his lapel. He didn't get his brains blown out, sadly. And I thought to myself, that DiCaprio did such a great job. I thought to myself, if you were to take a copy of this movie, go back in time with it to the 90s, this would kill all the Leo mania.
everybody would hate his guts for this character.
Oh, yeah, he did such a great job making a hateable character.
Yeah, well, not to mention he had such great dialogue and material to work with because obviously Quinten Tarantino wrote it, and like he said, this is the one character I hated after I wrote it. But DiCaprio was like, I'm in. Count me in. Yeah, I'll do this. I'll play this part. I'll take this role in a heartbeat. And then of course we meet Steven, the head of the house. We'll put it that way. We'll not use the derogatory term if you get my meaning. And man,
Uncle Tom.
what that? Well, no, because in this case,
I know.
No. I'm not. I have no problem with the term you used. He's not that because that type of person is somewhat amiable. Steven is ass.
Yeah. I know the term you use, the house slur. I'm not. I just wanted to,
Yeah, no, I got you, buddy. I got you. This is one of the few times that Samuel Jackson played a character I hated him. I don't hate Samuel Jackson. I hated Steven. I hated this character. I personally wanted to take his cane and shove it up his ass sideways.
Mm-hmm. What he gets in the end is so satisfying.
The whole shootout at the end where Django's got all of them pretty much dead to rights. And Steven's like, I count 6 bullets. And Django's like, 2 guns. You're done. And he's like, you've told me that you've seen so many slaves come through Candyland and you've seen all sorts of stuff done to those said slaves. He's like, but you never mentioned kneecapping. Django shoots him in both knees. Leaves him crippled. And then we find out what they do with the rest of the dynamite from the mining operation. Kaboom. I would say that was almost as satisfying as when and burned all of the Nazis and Inglourious Bastards.
Absolutely.
And the cool thing is that was done practically. They had one take to get it right, and they nailed it. Let me ask, in terms of Django's wardrobe evolution throughout what did you think of his wardrobe? Did you not dig it? What did you think?
Well, I'm trying to think overall. Like, obviously, first he's wrapped in a blanket. Then he takes one of those slave owners that he was liberated from. He takes his coat, and then later on picks his own clothes for his character. And that very flamboyant blue thing. I can't think of the name of it. It almost looks like it's
something like that.
Valet suit. That's right. And I thought, okay, blue's my favorite color. That one a bit much, but then his bounty hunter clothes, where he then when he first meets Candy, and he's pretending to be the fight guy or whatever you want to call it, and that olive drab color. I thought that is a great suit. I mean, I'm wearing a hood that's not dead on, but kind of similar, because I like that color as well.
I like the hats. I really like the hats for that suit and for the last suit that he's wearing when he saves Broomhill.
It's the same hat. Yeah, those are great hats.
Yeah. And I love this. I love the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to work cool. They work.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to find those online, but they're probably ridiculously expensive. Probably.
They might be.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and Django was right. That final suit he wore, which was he basically stole from Candy, justifiably so. Burgundy is a color that suits him well.
Yes, it is. One thing that
I
really of all the kills in that movie is at the end when Django takes out sister Laura Lee, I think is her name. something along those lines. And he says to the head housemaid, say goodbye, Cora, say goodbye to Miss Candy. And she's like, goodbye, Miss Candy. And he shoots her, and with perfect Tarantino timing, she gets yanked by a string and propelled backwards just from the shot to make it look more intense. I love that. I'm not gonna lie, I do.
I'm not even bothered that the angle would not have been spot on for physics, because it's just that funny and so satisfying as well. I just thought the amount she gets knocked back, I thought to Dirty Harry, 44 Magnum, most powerful handgun
in the world.
Not anymore, but at the time.
Yeah. I have to admit, too, the guns for this movie, the firearms were accurate. They were accurate for the time, and they worked. And they had some nice intricacy, with the different sights and the different types of rifles that they had. And, for King Dr. Schultz's, I'm going to call it his sniper rifle, although it's not a pure sniper rifle, but it's got that very old-timey sight that has the piece that flips up, and then it's got the piece that slides down to your eye. Right? Loved all the little intricacies. I've always loved old antique firearms, and this movie had some really good ones. I think summations of them. And I love James at the end, his twin revolvers and everything. And it looked like something, granted, it was around the same time period or a little bit before, something that obviously, Wyatt Earp would carry. If you remember Tombstone, everything, the guns that Wyatt Earp carried, the one gun that he carried, the Colt Peacemaker. So, let me ask you, what would you, compared to the other movies that we've reviewed thus far, how would you score this?
Compared to the others, that is a tough one. I'm trying to think of because we haven't ranked them since I think we did both Kill Bill movies. So I would probably put this in the top 3. Kill Bill's still at number 1, the number 1 spot. This is kind of fighting for the number 2 spot with Pulp Fiction for now, at least. But maybe Pulp Fiction has a slight advantage of just being shorter. But at the same time, I do like a good Western. I haven't always been a Western fan. I did kind of have an anti-Western phase when I was in school, but then I saw spaghetti Western. I was like, okay, not all Westerns are bad. And then I did watch some classics. I realized, okay, there is a functionality and a mythology about them that I can respect. I thought John Wayne's overrated.
Heretic.
I don't feel that way anymore.
I
just feel he's slightly overrated now. Slightly, not entirely.
I know, it's fine, Ace. Personally, for me, this is definitely in the top 4. My top 4 thus far of the ones we've done. It's still then Bastards, now Django. And honestly, after maybe I get a few more of the intricacies, it might bump up a spot or 2, maybe at least 1 spot. So, but before we close out, other thoughts? Anything you want to bring in terms of Django?
I kind of wanted to just, since you were mentioning the guns, you thought they're accurate. Like myself, I'm not a gun enthusiast, so I couldn't say. My cousin is. I don't know how much he is aware of the specifics of antiques, but he could probably have something to say, like, well, this one is correct. This one was a 6 held 6 shots. It clearly fired 8 or something like that. But I thought the use of guns was pretty good. And I do find like the old like revolver type to be a little bit more romantic era of firearms before we all switched to semi-automatics and so forth, because it took a little bit more skill, to either switch to guns or like reload quickly than just as opposed to switching out magazines. I know there's more practicality to semi-automatics compared to revolvers, but at least revolvers don't jam.
That is. For myself, I